wants to tell you a story, a true one. But before he does, do him a favor. If you crave tales that cling to the shadows long after you've heard them, click that subscribe button and ring the bell, because the story he's about to tell, it doesn't end when he stops speaking. It was the autumn of 1962 in the small, forgotten town of Oakhaven. And for the students of Oakhaven High, the homecoming dance was the pinnacle of the year. But for one boy, it would become a spectral tradition, a dance with a memory that refused to die. Mark Henderson was 17, all slicked back hair and nervous smiles. He was taking Sarah Miller, the girl he'd loved silently since the 3rd grade. The gymnasium was a galaxy of crepe paper and trembling hope, a world of swooning saxophones and shimmering taffeta under the slow spin of a disco ball. It was perfect for a while, but Mark noticed something off. A chill in the corner of the room the heaters couldn't touch, a flicker of movement in the periphery, a shape that dissolved when he turned his head. He shrugged it off as jitters until he saw her. Across the crowded floor, standing perfectly still by the bleachers, was a girl in a white dress. It wasn't a modern dress. It was an old-fashioned gown, lace-trimmed and hauntingly out of place. Her face was pale, her eyes dark hollows, and she was staring directly at Sarah. Mark's blood ran cold. He grabbed Sarah's hand. "Do you see that girl?" he whispered. Sarah followed his gaze, squinting into the shimmering gloom. "Who, Mark? There's no one there." He looked back. The space by the bleachers was empty. A cold dread, thick and oily, began to coil in his stomach. The memory of that vacant stare would haunt him for the rest of his life. The night wore on, but the joy had been leached from it. An hour later, as Mark fetched a punch for Sarah, he saw her again. This time she was closer, just at the edge of the dance floor. She wasn't looking at Sarah anymore. She was looking at him, and she was slowly raising her hand, a pale, graceful finger pointing not at him, but past him, towards the main doors of the gym. Her mouth opened, a black slit in her porcelain face, and she mouthed a single silent word: "Go." He stumbled back, sloshing red punch onto his shoes. When he looked again, she was gone. He felt a pull, a terrifying gravitational tug towards the doors. He had to know. Making an excuse to Sarah, he pushed through the crowd, the festive music now sounding like a twisted carnival tune. He stepped out into the cold October night, the gym doors swinging shut behind him, muting the laughter and the music. The parking lot was deserted, bathed in the sickly orange glow of sulfur lamps, and that's when he heard it. The sound of tires screeching, a terrible grinding crash of metal on metal, followed by an echoing, profound silence. He ran, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs, towards the road, but there was nothing. No twisted metal, no broken glass, just the empty, quiet street leading out of town. The air was still. The only sound was the distant fading beat of the dance music from the gym. He stood there, trembling, utterly alone. He had heard a ghost of a sound, the echo of an accident that hadn't happened yet, or one that had happened long, long ago. He never told Sarah. He couldn't. How do you explain that you're seeing phantoms, that you're hearing wrecks from another time? He buried the memory, deep. He married Sarah a few years later. They built a life. They had children. But every autumn, as the leaves turned, a deep, unsettled feeling would settle in his bones. The memory of the girl in the white dress would surface, a persistent, chilling thorn in the side of his happiness. It was a secret he carried, a cold stone in his pocket for 50 years. It was his granddaughter, Lily, who unearthed it. She was a senior at the same Oak Haven High, working on a digital history project about the town. She was interviewing her grandfather, a living relic of the town's past. She asked him about his own senior year, about the fads, the music, the dances, and Mark, now a man in his late 60s with a face etched by time, grew quiet. His eyes lost their focus, looking at something far away, something only he could see. The homecoming dance, he murmured, his voice a dry leaf rustle. There was an incident. Lily, sensing a story, leaned in, and slowly, haltingly, Mark told her. He told her about the girl in the white dress, about the silent command, about the sound of the crash in the empty night. He hadn't spoken of it in 5 decades, and the words felt foreign and dangerous on his tongue. Lily listened, her historian's mind whirring. This wasn't just a ghost story. This was a piece of local history, a forgotten tragedy. She became obsessed. She spent days in the town's microfiche archives, scrolling through brittle, yellowed copies of the Oak Haven Ledger. She wasn't looking for 1962. She was looking for the years before, and she found it. November 3rd, 1952, 10 years before her grandfather's homecoming dance. The headline was small, tucked away on page 4. Local teen perishes in auto accident. The article was brief. Eleanor Vance, 17 years old, a student at Oak Haven High, had been killed when her father's sedan was struck by a truck on the very road that ran past the school. The accident had occurred at 9:17 p.m., the night of the Oak Haven High homecoming dance. She had been on her way to the event wearing her brand new white dress, a dress she would never dance in. Lily felt a chill that had nothing to do with the library's air conditioning. She found the yearbook from 1952, and there she was, Eleanor Vance, a girl with pale, delicate features and dark, serious eyes. The same girl her grandfather had described with terrifying accuracy. This was no coincidence. This was a residue, a tear in the fabric of the town's memory. But it didn't end there. The more Lily dug, the more a horrifying pattern emerged. She cross-referenced the dates of the homecoming dance with local accident reports and obituaries, and she found another one, 1972. A boy named Michael Shaw reported seeing a pale, crying boy in outdated clothes wandering the parking lot during the dance. He'd been so spooked, he'd left early. The next day, a classmate of his, a boy who had left the dance at the same time, was killed in a hit-and-run on that same stretch of road. It happened again in 1982. A girl told her friends she'd seen a weird, old-fashioned kid staring at her from the bleachers. She'd brushed it off. Her boyfriend, driving her home, lost control of his car on a perfectly dry road. He survived. She did not. Lily's blood ran cold. This wasn't just one ghost. This was a cycle, a cursed 10-year echo. The homecoming dance wasn't just a dance. It was a stage, a place where the veil thinned and a spectral sentinel appeared, not to harm, but to warn. Eleanor Vance, killed on her way to the dance, had become a permanent part of it. Her spirit was trapped in that night, reappearing every decade to try and prevent another tragedy. She would appear to one person, the one who might be able to listen, to see, to change the outcome. She wasn't a malevolent spirit. She was a guardian, a failed guardian. In 1952, she had failed to stop her own death. In every decade since, she had tried to stop someone else's, pointing, warning, pleading in her silent way, and she had always failed. The realization struck Lily with the force of a physical blow. The cycle was due. It was 2022, 60 years since her grandfather's encounter. The next homecoming dance was in 3 days. Someone was going to see Eleanor, and if history held true, someone was going to die. She rushed to her grandfather, spreading the old newspapers and her notes across his kitchen table. Mark's face went ashen as he understood the pattern. The ghost he'd seen hadn't been a random haunting. He had been chosen. He had been given a warning he was too young and too frightened to understand. The guilt of 50 years settled on him like a shroud. He'd heard that crash. He had been given a chance to do what? To stop it? But how? Together, grandfather and granddaughter devised a desperate, insane plan. They would go to the dance. They would find the person Eleanor appeared to, and they would make them listen. They would break the cycle. The night of the 2022 Oak Haven High homecoming dance arrived. The gym looked almost exactly as it had in Mark's memory. Same crepe paper, same shimmering disco ball, same air of trembling anticipation. But for Mark and Lily, standing in the corner, it was a haunted house. They watched the crowd, their eyes scanning for any flicker of anomaly, any sign of a pale dress in the sea of color. For 2 agonizing hours, they saw nothing. Hope began to curdle into despair. Maybe they were wrong. Maybe the cycle had ended. And then Lily saw her, a girl in a vintage white lace dress, standing by the bleachers exactly where Mark had described her 60 years prior. She was translucent, a photograph fading into reality. Her dark, hollow eyes were fixed on a young man near the punch bowl, a lanky, nervous-looking boy named Jake. Lily nudged her grandfather. Mark followed her gaze, and his breath caught in his throat. Time had folded in on itself. He was 17 again, watching the same ghost, the same silent tragedy preparing to replay itself. Eleanor raised her pale hand and pointed towards the gym doors, just as she had for Mark. Jake, the boy she was warning, frowned, looked around, and then shook his head as if clearing a daydream. He turned back to his friends, oblivious. He hadn't understood. The warning was being ignored, just as it always had been. They were running out of time. Mark knew what he had to do. He, a 68-year-old man, walked straight towards the ghost. He ignored the strange looks from the teenagers, his eyes locked on the spectral girl. He stopped a few feet from her. She turned her head slowly, her dark eyes meeting his, and in that moment, he didn't see a monster. He saw a 17-year-old girl trapped, scared, and endlessly, heartbreakingly lonely. He didn't know what to say. What do you say to a ghost? Eleanor, he whispered, his voice barely audible over the music. Eleanor Vance. The specter's form seemed to solidify, her eyes widening in shock. She had been a silent observer for 70 years. No one had ever seen her and known her name. We hear you, Mark said, his voice gaining strength. We understand. You have to show us. You have to show us how to stop it. The ghost of Eleanor Vance looked from Mark's aged, determined face to Lily's terrified one. A single, glistening, spectral tear traced a path down her pale cheek, and then she did something she had never done before. She didn't point to the door. She lifted her hand and pointed directly at Mark's chest. Then she pointed to Lily, and then she pointed again firmly towards the gym doors. The message was terrifyingly clear. You, both of you, come with me. This was the twist, the real-life revelation that changed everything. It was never about saving the person she appeared to. It was about finding the right person to see her, a person whose life would become intertwined with her story, a person who would be there decades later to finally understand. Mark was the key, not in 1962, but now. He and Lily were the ones who had to leave. They were the ones who had to be on that road. The predicted victim wasn't Jake. The cycle had been waiting for them all along. Without a second thought, Mark grabbed Lily's hand. They pushed through the crowd and out into the cold night, just as Mark had done 60 years before. The parking lot was empty. The night was silent. They stood there, hand in hand, waiting. For what? They didn't know. A minute passed, then 2, and then from the south, they saw headlights. A car was speeding down the road towards the school, and from the north, a large delivery truck running a late-night route. They were on a collision course, heading for the exact spot where Eleanor had died 70 years prior. The ghost hadn't been warning them to avoid the road. She had been leading them to it. To be there, Mark acted on an instinct he didn't know he possessed. He ran into the middle of the road, directly into the path of the oncoming car, waving his arms frantically. Lily, screaming, followed him. The car's brakes screeched, the smell of burnt rubber filling the air as it swerved, coming to a shuddering halt just feet from them. The delivery truck thundered past, its horn blaring, the wind of its passage whipping at their clothes. It missed the now-stopped car by inches. In the driver's seat of the car was a terrified, wide-eyed Jake, the boy from the punch bowl. He had gotten a sudden, overwhelming feeling of dread in the gym, a compulsion to leave, to get in his car and just drive. He had been the target, and they had just saved him. They stood in the sudden ringing silence, their hearts pounding. The danger had passed. The cycle was broken. Mark and Lily turned, looking back towards the school. And there, standing just at the edge of the parking lot, under the sickly orange glow of the lamp, was Eleanor. She was no longer pale and hollow. Her form seemed warmer, more solid. For the first time, she was smiling, a peaceful, grateful, beautiful smile. She looked at them, nodded slowly, and then she began to fade. But not like a ghost dissolving, it was different. It was a release. She faded like a sigh of relief until there was nothing left but the empty night and the faint, distant echo of a saxophone from the gym. They had done it. They had given her the peace she had been searching for 70 years. They had broken Oakhaven's spectral tradition. The story of the midnight homecoming dance was over. But the truth they uncovered is far more terrifying than any ghost. The real horror isn't the phantom we see. It's the warning we ignore. It's the history we forget. The patterns we dismiss as coincidence. The small, silent voices we choose not to hear. Eleanor Vance wasn't a monster. She was a memory, a piece of the town's soul that was stuck. And it took someone finally listening, finally seeing her, not as a specter of dread, but as a person in need, to set her free. So the next time you feel a chill for no reason or see a flicker of movement from the corner of your eye, don't just shrug. Look closer, listen, because you might be the one who is meant to see. You might be the next link in a chain of events you cannot yet comprehend. Your story, the one whispering just beneath the surface of your own reality, might be the one that needs to be told. If these true chilling tales are the kind of darkness that calls to you, that makes you question the shadows in your own home, then do us a favor. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your own real encounters in the comments below. Let's unravel these mysteries together. Fade into the ebony or let it consume you.